Hey, what's going on, everybody? I wanted to take a few minutes to talk about probably one of the most frustrating things about Last War, as far as how you upgrade specific heroes and hero types in the game. And I wish they had thought this out better than what they had. I don't know if this is what they were if this is what they were planning this to play like or not. But this is pretty frustrating. I really wish they would have done this differently, because once you hit level 30, you have to make a decision once you start pushing to 35, unless you want to waste a lot of oil. And that is upgrading the centers. While it doesn't seem like a lot to maybe do one level or two, but if you look at this, every hero march size is increased by 3. So when you have 5 heroes, that's 15. And then as you increase this 2, 3, 4, 5 times, that number is just going to grow to where you're going to have about 100 more troops in a march on one team versus another. And then even with tech, where you can go in, you can choose, you can choose to do aircraft or tank or missile. It does take quite a bit of resources and time to upgrade these, and as well as the Valor badges, which isn't a big deal for some players. But you have to pick and choose. You can't try to do all of them at once if you are free to play or a budget spender. You have to pick one, and then you're stuck with it. You can't change your mind halfway through and go back without severely slowing down progress to something if you're pushing, especially when you're going to headquarters 35, because you're going to spend 2.3 million oil taking this from 33 to 34. If you were to do that in all 3 of these, it's going to take you an additional 4 to 5 weeks, maybe even more, just to then upgrade your headquarters. And the question is it worth it? When you upgrade your headquarters, you get stat boosts for your teams, and then you also get the additional hero levels, which when you upgrade your hero levels, you're going to get an increase in your march size, which that increase is greater than what you're getting for your center levels, but you have to upgrade each hero separately. So you're going to have teams that start to fall really far behind, and you're having these huge power gaps, especially when you have, say, a gorilla on your team, and then you have a team that doesn't, and then you have, a third team that just feels like it's just left behind, just doesn't get touched because you have so much resources and so much time going into the other 2 teams that falls off. And then you have a 4th march, which, I have just a single hero on here, but even with everybody on it, it's like 24 million power, 25 million power, which isn't very much, especially when you're at this level. If you ask me, this starts to become almost a useless march for free-to-play players and budget spenders, because it just doesn't do much. You can't do a whole lot with it. It has some versatility, and Winter Storm and Desert Storm helping capture points. I see the use in that. But overall, I wish they would have found ways to be a little more flexible with this. I don't know if once you upgrade one of these, you have a reduced cost in oil to upgrade the next one, or just no oil cost at all. I think that would have been better than pigeonholing and sticking us with one. Essentially, you have to make a choice: either fast progression with the headquarters, or upgrade your centers. And one of the biggest frustrating parts about all that is, if you pick and choose one of those 2 and you choose wrong, and then they come out later with tier 11 troops and say that's at headquarters 34, headquarters 35, and you decided to instead upgrade the tech center and the missile center as well as your aircraft center, now all of a sudden you're not just behind on the headquarters, but then you're behind on getting your tier 11 troops, which I just find that just beyond frustrating. I don't understand that logic, how you have to pick and choose a lot of this stuff, especially when it's already so hard for free-to-play players and budget spenders to keep up. And now it's even harder to keep up because they have to pick and choose, and you're leaving so much behind. You're having these huge declines in your marches and your overall power to a lot of these teams. And just for reference, there's about a 6 million power gap here between these teams. But if I go to my tank squad, you'll see I have mostly level 40 gear on a lot of these. So yeah, let me know what you guys think. If they messed up by making you have to spend oil for all these centers, or if you think it's fine. It creates a little bit of diversity in what you do here. I just think if they were planning for that they would have been a little more, made things a little more available to players to be able to make this decision on whether you're going to a tank, aircraft, or missile. Because aircraft and missile, I feel like those heroes are a little bit harder to come by. They're harder to upgrade. So making that choice early on is a lot more difficult to do if you're not spending money or spending a lot of money. Going over to the 3v3 brawl here, you're going to see it is pretty glaring, the differences in power and how everybody focuses on one team because you can't spread them out. So a lot of players spread out their power in 3v3, but then you have lineups like this where you have some tank, some aircraft. You'll see that on the two teams in the middle on the right, and then they just throw in their missile squad. What you see is just a huge gap. And this is where it becomes, I don't want to say, irrelevant and in 3v3, because you almost, the third team is almost a throwaway. You almost know that's going to be beat. And then it becomes, a matter of how strong your second best team is and if it can hold up in a fight versus your opponent. And when you're picking and choosing and all of a sudden you're having to dump all your resources and only one team is getting stronger, then this game mode becomes even harder for those players because they're going to have such a gap. They're going to have one strong team and then a big drop off to their second and then even bigger drop off to their third. So like here, you can see I have all my power right now is on my main team and then tank and then my missile squad. So when you're choosing which group you want to go with, whether that's air or missile or tank, you really need to think long term. Do you really want to stick with this? Can you make it work? Can you make a team that can help counter if you're in trouble? For instance, if you have air, do you have a good tank team to back up your air squad? Because if somebody's running missile, will you be able to do enough damage and counter the missile squad with your tank squad? Or do you just have to absorb the loss because you're running air and they're running missile? So that's one thing to think about when you're doing this, when you're building your teams and trying to figure out which way you want to go and where to dump your resources. Because if you go in to where you think you're going to be able to evenly spread everything out and continue to do that throughout the game, you're going to be absolutely beat down by players that dump all their resources in one. I know a lot of people that have a lot more power in their first team. They're running, maybe 42, 43 million, but their second team is probably about the same power as my second team, just because they focus so much in their first squad and their second squad just lacks so far behind, and then their third team is just even farther behind. So just something to think about. I don't recommend, unless you're spending a lot of money trying to focus on upgrading all three teams, focus on one. If you can do two, great. but just know that there's going to be a power gap unless you can upgrade gear as well. And then the Gorilla, again, further advances that one team ahead of all the other ones. So you're always going to have that power gap until they bring out other overlords. And a bit frustrating, and I know a lot of players aren't happy with how they did this. Let me know if you guys think they did this the right way or the wrong way. But again, just be careful and be mindful when you're choosing and upgrading things that you're doing it wisely. You're not just dumping stuff wherever. You're picking and you're upgrading with a purpose. And all right. Well, thanks for watching, and I hope you guys have a good day.